Hello Dreamers, welcome back to this new appointment with my fantastic tutorials on dreams. In today's episode, the second part on the animations behind the movement of the Jedi spaceship. In part 1 we saw how I used the distort tool to move the wings of the TIE-Starfighter. Here we'll do a slightly different job. As you can see, I made some changes for the video recording. I'm trying to improve the quality and presentation of the videos, so you can have the best possible view. I take this opportunity to ask if you have any advice, or if there is some aspect in the videos that you think I need to improve, bring out the critic in you. Speaking of other things, if you follow the Procreate channels, finally in a video they gave us some updates on the work in progress on Dreams. The first good news, as I was telling you, they are also actively working on the inclusion of new features such as lasso tool. But one thing that in my opinion is even more important is the drawing part, which, as they told us, has been redesigned from scratch for a better experience. As a result, there will be a new frame-by-frame system, which we hope will be easier to manage and more precise. Finally, there will be the possibility to export your works as an animated GIF. We will therefore have the possibility, for example, to animate a text, a logo, etc. and insert it as a watermark in our videos, because it will have a transparent background. New filters will arrive too. In short, I believe that in 2025 Dreams will finally open their wings, even to the spectacles. So stay connected, you will see some great things. Like the video, activate the bell, and before starting the tutorial I wanted to wish you happy holidays and happy new year. I'm not sure if there will be a new video next week, mostly because I won't be able to get up from my Christmas lunch for a couple of days. But don't worry, you will still have updates. Anyway, I would say that we can start today's video. First of all, I'm going to remove the elements that we don't need. We focus only on the Jedi spaceship. In this small part of the timeline, we'll see the animation on the spaceship and how I did in this case to create this Fake-3d movement. The main animation that we will see today is this one, and to help me realize it, also in this case I helped myself with Sketchfab, the site that I told you about in the first part. For now I'm hiding some elements such as the rear booster that we don't need for now. Okay, this way the focus will be all on the spaceship. As I told you before, we are going to see this animation, that is a torsion of the spaceship that changes our view of it from a top position to a front-rear position. As for the first part of the TIE-Starfighter, also in this case the elements of the spaceship are contained in a first large group, and inside another subgroup, to have the possibility of two different anchor points. First group and subgroup. In the first group the anchor point is fixed outside the image, to create this animation of rotation, zoom in and out. This first large group then flies the spaceship from one side of the screen to the other. I'm really good at miming animations with my hands. What do you think? Let's go back to us. In the subgroup instead we find another type of rotation of the spaceship, this time with the anchor point fixed at the center. This helped me pay attention to perform, for example, these rapid movements, which make us feel the weight of the spaceship and the physics that govern it. As for the first part where we animated the TIE-Starfighter, this trick of the two groups gave me the possibility to create very fluid and realistic animations, making the ship almost dance. Now I duplicate the whole group and for now I delete the keyframes of this animation to stop the ship and show you what is the most interesting animation of Fake-3d. Okay, now let's move the ship inside the screen. In the center so we can better see the animation we are interested in. And that is this. I'm happy with the result. There are a million 3D software that would make my life much easier, but being able to do all this here on Dreams is incredible. Now I'm going to hide some elements to start from the lower levels. There are a few of them, and now we will look at them calmly one at a time. This is the first group we find inside, which there are two levels that constitute the main part of the spaceship, which then gives its shape. In this case I drew the wings on Procreate with the top view to be able to have full control here on Dreams, with the distortion tool. If I move forward with the cursor, the shape of the wings flattens in the correct perspective. On the contrary, if I had used only the resizing tool, I would not have been able to obtain this result. As I will show you shortly, in these cases, when we have two shapes that need to distort in a mirror-like way, what I recommended is to create the animations only on one. To make you understand, I hide the right wing. Let's create the animations we need on this left shape. On a new track we copy this shape. Make sure that the keyframes in the timeline match those below. With the three dots at the top we are going to invert, in this case on x-axis, the shape, and holding down we bring it to the right. I'm going to zoom in to join the shapes correctly. OK. So, if you have to distort two elements in the same way like in this case, you can use this method. It will definitely help you speed up your work. For those who don't know, since at the moment Dreams doesn't give us the possibility to copy and paste keyframes, this trick could be useful to you. For example, I want to copy this distortion keyframe farther on in the timeline. I move it forward a little, I click to create a new keyframe and bring it where I need it, on the timeline. In this way, if I perform the distortion, as in this case, by bringing the initial keyframe back to a later point, the shape of the element will return to its original state. When we can copy and paste keyframes, it will surely be even faster, but for now we can't do anything else but use this method. I then added a brightness filter to the wings, in correspondence with the distortion animations. This creates a very interesting light effect that gives volume and greater three-dimensionality to the movement. 50% brightness with wings with top view, and then it goes to 70% with the distortion. Now let's go up the timeline to discover the other elements of the ship. And we find the head of R4. In this case, the robot's head makes a perspective movement on its anchor point, as if when its wings descended were coming a little toward us. The head group of R4 contains various elements, and also in this case, with the help of the masks, I created the rotation of the head. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll put some links. I made some tutorials on this type of animation. But what interests us today is the perspective movement that it makes on this anchor point. With the anchor point fixed outside the head area, with the zooming resize tool I can position R4 in the right perspective to the movement of the wings. As the wings lower, the robot moves backwards. giving up the impression that it fixed to the hull of the spaceship. Let's go up further in the timeline and find this element, which obviously serve to outline the rear part of the spaceship. Here too, as for the wings, I created the shape on the left, performed the animations I needed and duplicated on the right. Here I distorted the shape in the opposite way to the wings. In the view from above, the shape is distorted to create the right perspective. When the wings are lowered, the rear returns to its original shape. As you can see, this is the shape I drew on Procreate. The distortion tool here on Dreams is really a powerful tool. It may seem like a long and difficult job, but if I had to draw every single frame of this ship in different positions, we would be here talking about something that will be finished next year, I think. Let's go up further and see two more elements. This level are part of the central body of the ship, and here too with the distortion tool. Here, when the nose of the spaceship is lowered, they practically disappear. And if you look carefully, they follow this curve. Every detail is important for the correct functioning. If I zoom in, we will then see other levels that cover the edges where there are holes. Let's go back to the previous shape, let's see better. I also drew this element on Procreate with the top view, even if, as you can see, I had to distort it a bit right from the start to better adapt it to the shape of the spaceship. When it disappears behind the rear of the ship with the distortion tool, it practically becomes completely thinner. And also for this layer I added the brightness filter to its distortion. Let's go up, 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 up. Let's find the first two shapes that delimit the edges of the back part. Here I was lucky. I had to create an almost imperceptible movement, but the important thing was that it covered the edge underneath. If we go and look at the anchor point, it's set practically in the center of the spaceship. This allowed me to make this slight rotation. I'll take this one on the left so you can see better. My intention was to make the rotation follow the edge of the rear part of the ship. I'm going to reactivate it. The distortion of the shape also changes the angle of the edge, and to delimit it in the right way I slightly rotated the layer above. Rotated and scaled slightly on the x-axis. Here too, as you can see, small details, but they make the difference. We have already reached a good result. Let's go up in the timeline to discover the other elements. We find this shape. This too is a bit of a hole plug for the central part. As you can see, the shapes don't match perfectly, but with this element above I solved the problem. If by chance something like this happens to you, be ingenious to divert the problems. The movement that this shape makes is a slight scaling and shifting on the y-axis, from bottom to top. With the front rear part, the element enlarges a little, and with the view from above it goes down and becomes smaller to follow the correct perspective. On the contrary, it starts lower and smaller, then it rises and gets bigger. And this is the result. As the muzzle lowers, this shape also comes toward the viewer and grows a little. This helps give a good idea of perspective. We continue to climb and find the central part. All the elements are obviously contained in a group, and now we will see them all in detail. I'm hiding the layer below for now, and here we are. The lowest level within the group are the engines. The pilot capsule above performs this movement, following the perspective of the wings. At the same time, the motors start from the bottom to go up a little, but it's not the only movement they perform. Together with the movement from a more elongated initial position, they are compressed on the y-axis to have a correct perspective, resizing that occurs on the anchor point fixed here. So from the starting point to perform the animation, I move the motors upwards and resize. It doesn't matter if you press them too much, there will be the flame of the engines that will give the correct circular shape. In this case they will be more flattened towards the bottom and then have a more circular shape when the spaceship shows us its rear. With this trick I didn't have to worry too much about the shape of the engines at least. We go up further, we find the pilot's capsule and its elements. Let's start from the back. Here I really worked with my imagination. Apart from the movement from bottom to top, I had to alter the shape itself to obtain a realistic back in the elevated position. This is the starting shape I drew on Procreate. But when the animation goes on, as you see, the shape changes. With the Alter tool I created this other shape. Without this tool I would have to draw the shape transformation frame by frame, but here Dreams really saved me. For example, if I go to remove the alteration keyframe, the shape could not have matched the correct perspective. With the distortion tool, in this case, I could not have achieved this shape. But with the warp tool, working on the individual vertices, I created this second shape to perform the animation correctly. We then find this large smile, which also here goes to delimit the edges of the shape below. Here I was lucky. Instead, anchor point in the center, I just had to move it and resize it on the y-axis. From above you can see the shape I drew on Procreate and then it moves and squashes upwards. Now let's go down the timeline. The other elements will be behind the rear. Here we find the pilot's cabin. Its shape changes and it flattens, disappearing behind the rear of the spaceship. Finally, the last piece that moves on y-axis, in this case towards the center of the ship, to create the right twist. Move and resize. If I zoom, you can see better. Move and resize. Let's go and discover the last two groups that contain the edges closest to the viewer. Here I did a slightly different job than the ones below. I'll turn the other levels back on so you can understand what they cover. As you can see, they cover this part, marking the edge between the wings and the rear of the ship. And also follow the shape of these two levels on the side of the capsule. And now let's see the animations that move these two groups. Groups within which there are two separate shapes. This time the anchor point is on the outside to perform this type of rotation. When we see the ship from above, the groups are rotated downwards and then rotate upwards. As I was telling you, inside the group there are two elements and the yellow one also in this case performs a distortion animation on its own. If you pay attention, the shape changes when the spaceship is twisted. For example, if I delete the keyframe at this point, the yellow shape goes back down. This is the shape drawn on Procreate, that I then distorted so that it followed the edges correctly. Distorted shape when viewed from above. And here it returns to its original shape. Very interesting result. What do you think? Now that we've seen how I made this fake 3D here on the ship, we are going to move it in the scene, the first animation on the main group, which will be the movement in the space. I set the keyframes in correspondence with the ship's twist animation. For fast flight movements, animations are usually included in 1 second, to make the action fast, paced and dynamic. At this point, for example, the animation is even faster, under the second. I'm also going to set the keyframe at the end. The movement in this case is a little slower. From the first keyframe, start the animation. With zoom, I take the ship off the screen. Must remain completely hidden. The ship arrives at this point. In this other keyframe I rotate and zoom out again, but without exiting the screen. Ok, like this. And at this other point, reverse zoom and rotation. This is the result. The animation here is already very smooth. As we saw in the first part of the tutorial last week, if you haven't seen it, go and get it. The elements of the ship are grouped into 2 large groups to perform animations on a different anchor point. In correspondence with the animations of the main group, I had some movement keyframes in the subgroup. What I want to do is add the rotations on the center of the ship, so that the weight of the movement and the related physics can be perceived. Moving in the timeline to 3/10 of a second from the starting point of the animation, I had the rotation. And I had another keyframe here in the same way as the ones above. Here I perform the rotation, like this. The rotation on this anchor point. Now I'll do a test. I'm going to rotate some more. Ok, already better, and I'm going to add another rotation here. First the keyframe at the end, so that the ship returns to its original position. And here the rotation. And here you see how the animation is more fluid and realistic. By intelligently using groups and subgroups on different anchor points, we can obtain very interesting animations. As the last thing, we will see a 2D special effect that is the trail of the rear rocket. Here too, to create this special effect, I used the distortion tool on the lights you see behind the engines. I duplicated this layer above, So I already have the moving and resizing animations. But now let's see with the distortion tool what I added. I wanted to create a glow, a trail behind the ship. For example, in correspondence with this movement, I want to bring out a bit of this trail. I add here a distortion keyframe. The animation will be very fast. I add another keyframe here and one at the end, to bring the shape back to the original state. And here I distort the shape like this. I stretch the shape as much as possible and move the vertices outwards to maintain the correct perspective. It's already good as an animation, but I want to make it faster, especially in the second part. For do that, I bring the final keyframe closer. In a few steps, with the distortion tool, I added a fantastic 2D effect. And vamos! It's been a while since I said it. Now I'm going to speed it up a bit more and add a blur filter. Let's try a blur here of 11%. Ok, but more speed even in the final part. Ok, sounds good. But since I'm crazy, I'm going to distort it a little more. I'm crazy! The important thing is that at this point the vertices do not go beyond the glow below. For an even great effect. Ok, now perfect. With the same method I add another one here too, the rapid movement of the spaceship. And speed the video now. And here is a 2D effect only using the Dreams tool, very interesting. Even today we have reached the end of this fantastic tutorial, which as always I hope will be useful for your future projects. We are almost at the end of this 2024 and I have managed to close the circle on the main animations that have accompanied my work this year. I don't know if we will see each other next week, but in the meantime I wish you Merry Christmas. Thank you so much for watching, put like and ho ho ho!